All right, here we go. This is the System Failure Podcast, number 51. How are we doing, Nate?
Hey, good. Number 51, Brian. We're coming off of the heady success of having our dear friend of the show, Dr. Michael Hudson, come on the last episode. It was lengthy and kind of wonky, but I really enjoyed myself, probably even more than I should have. I thought we had pretty good questions for the good doctor. I was a little like... starstruck? Not really starstruck, but just excited to have Dr. Hudson on. So I just felt like my responses could have been more. It's hard to like focus on what you're saying and deal with the excitement of speaking to the man himself. But overall, it was pretty good, and the response online has been stratospheric. I mean, we have really taken a big step forward in terms of our popularity and our relevance even to the heterodox economic community. We did have our own post on naked capitalism today, which is pretty cool, eh, Brian?
Yeah. Well, we just gotta get used to having big names on the podcast. I'm sure we'll get used to interviewing them.
Yeah.
What makes you say it was wonky?
Wonky in the sense of like, in the sense of a lot of details and economic, high-minded economic ideas.
A lot of nitty-gritty.
Yeah, that's a better word for it. Wonky is usually when people say that something's wonky, they usually are referring to like policy discussions, which are very specific and very arcane. So probably not the best word to use there, but I guess the point across, I suppose, if you explain it.
Did you learn anything new from old Dr. Hudson there?
Well, the one thing I learned from Dr. Hudson is what I was talking about. How the Jews were the moneylenders of the Middle Ages, which I'd gotten from David Graeber's book, where he goes on at length about particularly King John, the successor to Richard the Lionheart. If I've got my historical boxcars lined up properly, specifically loan money to Jews so that he could then torture them and basically borrow their money and then kill them instead of paying it back, like that. But there is a paragraph in Graeber's book that says, but we mustn't overestimate the role of Jews in medieval money lending. And by the 1100s, it was mostly, and this is virtually word to word what Hudson said, it was the Saracens and the Lombards of central Italy who had taken over banking duties by the time the Crusades were in high swing. So I think he was speaking specifically with respect to the Crusades, whereas I was just speaking to the Middle Ages in general. But I did learn, I didn't realize that the lending activities had been taken from the Jews as during the High Middle Ages and given to these other groups instead. So that was pretty good. I'm going to have to factor that little detail, that little wrinkle into my overall historical worldview. I think I tried to structure the questions in such a way as to introduce our audience to the ideas of Dr. Hudson, generally speaking, versus getting into this too bogged down in the weeds. So as you can tell, we did the general overview of Hudson's last 3 or 4 books. And if we had Hudson on again, I would definitely have a whole lot more questions to ask him. And I think I'd be better on my feet too during the period after I asked him thinking up follow-up questions and whatnot. So I don't know. What did you think, Brian? Did you think that, for me, of course, it was wildly entertaining, but do you think someone who's stumbled upon system failure in their Spotify app for the first time and listened to that episode would be interested by it, or did it flow? I mean, what does a third-party person think? What does a third person who's not me or Hudson think about how it all went down?
Let's see. Well, I think if you are saddled with student loan debt and are wondering about the history of how this came to be, I mean, it certainly seems like a fine primer.
Yeah. Or why no one wants to work anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, the history of debt. Well, I mean, the system failure is a constellation of ideas, as you like to say. And I think, broadly speaking, it's about untying the knot in all kinds of ways and sort of, I don't know, if you believe in a two-party system and oh yeah, we really got to vote for the Democrats here. If you're falling for the good cop, bad cop routine, well, I would say you are in the knot. But I think the knot is a lot of things. And so, yeah, there's the history of debt. Now, I guess I'm interested in the self-improvement side of the knot, or I don't know. I guess the specific history. I guess I'm not I don't know. I guess I'm interested in our political, system and all that stuff. I guess the nitty gritty of the history of debt. I don't know. I thought it was a fine a fine level of discussion, I guess. But I guess if people listen to this podcast, maybe they have some inclination of what it is that I care about versus what you care about, which probably is a Venn diagram, but not exactly the same thing.
Well, that's inevitable, of course. But it's the issues of self-improvement or whatever it is that everyone struggles with, and then the economics. They're not inseparable. They're not islands. They're connected. 2 podcasts ago, when we first started discussing Jonathan Haidt, we were able to spend the second half of the pod talking about all of the economic reasons why that was the case, why children are being driven nuts by apps and whatnot. So there's always like everything that's happening to both of us, it has an economic dimension to it. It's just a matter of scratching the surface a little bit. So I do think that they're all connected, but I take your meaning nonetheless, though.
Yes.
Well, is that all we have to say about Dr. Hudson's inaugural visit to the System Failure Podcast? Should we move on and talk about Jonathan Haidt and the developments in your own life that have taken place since 2 podcasts ago? We got interrupted by the August arrival of Dr. Hudson, so we should pick up that thread from episode number 49. So if you're ready, though, do you have any more closing thoughts for us about the visit of Dr. Hudson?
I guess I don't have anything in particular to say anything else about Dr. Hudson.
I guess I just have one last thing. It is true, like the history of debt, Dr. Hudson made the salient point that Babylonian economics are more sophisticated than our own in the sense that they recognize that things, herds of cattle or seeds of corn grow in an S curve, which is to say they start out at an exponential rate but then taper off over time as all populations reach the limits of their growth. And so the reality is that there are problems that have already been solved, that certain parties have a vested interest in us not understanding, so we can't resolve the same problems that people have solved in the past. So that's the real value of history. It's like the same reason that the apps are designed to be addictive is to kind of rip us all, or it's to sell our attention to advertisers, to the highest bidder who will, so there's a similar parallel in the history of debt, where debt is this mathematical model that models growth, but then there's these real world constraints on growth that you also have to put on the mathematical model, or you'll end up in a society where a tiny number of people are able to abscond with everyone's wealth for themselves, and it will obviously the society will then sink like the Titanic without a trace if you're not careful about that, which is why sin and forgiveness and Armageddon are big themes in Christianity, and why we've been misled as to the financial nature of Christianity these past few millennia.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in your last weekly essay, you were talking about how science is the seed cord of capitalism or technology, or this.
Science creates technology. Technology is taken by entrepreneurs to market, and it's deployed by means of borrowing money from the banks. So that's what I was talking about. And the science is the seed corn of capitalism.
Well, and you were saying that we've run out of scientific development on which to capitalize, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of issues. One is that science is not some kind of an immortal ideology. It has its weaknesses and its issues, so that limits the amount of technology that science can bring to market. And then the other issue is we've just harvested all the low-hanging fruit, and so only the really tough questions remain. And so the rate of technological development falls off in an S curve, just like the limits of population growth.
Well, science is like a political idea, or it can be anyway, and that's why, we talked about Eric Weinstein and the history of peer-reviewed research and Ghislaine Maxwell's father. Robert Maxwell and the Pergamon Press. It is, But there is this thing. Well, I feel like to say that science is slowing down, I think seems improbable. And I guess I wanted to riddle you this, but suppose we suppose we start harvesting asteroids, right? And that kind of space travel becomes a regular thing, Elon Musk wants to do. And Well, I mean, if we start becoming like an intergalactic species or whatever, the limits of resources are going to change, right? There'll be like a whole new frontier again, and that's what we don't have. And it seems like the potential for growth at that point is like almost limitless. And so, I mean, I guess there is like an S curve, but we are kind of, I mean, maybe this limit's going to go away, right?
Well, I see what you're saying, but I want to just take a crowbar and pry apart like two magnets that are stuck together. This idea of science on the one hand and absolute truth on the other. Right? Currently, our scientific authorities currently assure us that faster than light travel is impossible. It is so much so that the speed of light. Are you aware that scientists have never measured the same speed of light twice in their practical experiments?
I've heard something about this.
Yeah. Every time we clock the speed of light, it's different. Now, the speed of light is supposed to be a constant according to Einstein's theory of relativity. Right? So what we do, this is insane to me. What we do is every time we get a new reading for the speed of light, we change the definition of the meter such that the new speed of light matches what we should expect it to be. So they change the definition of the meter so that they get the right speed of light every time. Now, all I'm saying is interstellar travel with conventional chemical rockets is impossible, right? That might get us to Mars, maybe. And that's it, or maybe even to the asteroid belt, possibly. But interstellar travel is going to involve some kind of a breaking of the current laws of physics. So I will just say this in response to your query: if we are able to achieve interstellar travel, we're going to have to do it in defiance of our current scientific authorities and not with their help. So all that is to say, the truth of the situation is one thing, and science is able to get at the truth in its own limited way, but it's not a wholesale substitute for truth, right? It's not, that's what I'm trying to say. We are going to have to overcome science if we're going to achieve interstellar travel, in other words.
Well, I think that in theory, AI is going to like solve this problem, right? I mean, how long can they keep this genie in the bottle?
Meaning the AI genie?
Yeah, to such that it can be controlled and not... Like, it seems like at some point there's going to be the intersection of like the AI problem and the UFO problem, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we should find out about intergalactic travel or find out what's going on with these crazy UFOs in the sky at that point, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that I in my mind, I have a dichotomy between Platonism on the one hand and science on the other, right? They're the fundamental, magic belongs in the Platonism school, right, for example, and Christianity belongs with science in the sense that science and Christianity promulgate the idea that we are tiny minds moving around inside a vast universe. But if really the vast universe is contained within our minds, well, then now that opens up all kinds of possibilities that are, I guess, imposed inherently to the doctrines of science. And I don't know, but that I think is just as a earth-shattering discovery that the Earth orbits the sun and not vice versa accompanied the economic shakeup that was the transition between the Middle Ages and the modern era. Well, when economies collapse, so do people's wholesale conceptions of reality also. So it's like you have these epiphanies waiting for you. And I guess it would be foolish to assume all of our epiphanies are in the past. I suspect that with the collapse of the science-fueled capitalist system, we will also have a vast shakeup in our conception of reality, an inversion of reality, like the one that came about in the Middle Ages, the Copernican inversion. And, all that is going to, again, science assumes that there is such thing as an objective universe and there can be such thing as an objective observer. But really, if the observer is giving rise to the universe they are observing, well, that leaves science in a terrible problem. It's sailed past the assumption that there is an objective universe just to set up shop, just to establish its ideology. And I think that might be a very limiting paradigm that's going to have to be overturned before we can move beyond the Einsteinian paradigm in which we're currently locked. You still think science is, you think science's bag of tricks is turning out exciting new revelations apace like it was in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries?
Well, man, I mean, back then the internet didn't even exist.
No, they didn't have the internet, and they didn't have cool screens. But the scientific revolution changed the world over and over again. I mean, from the discovery of telescopes to navigational instruments that allowed the circumnavigation of the globe and the discovery of 2 new continents. Like, we're not getting new continents. We're not getting, space for economic growth like that. Science is not providing space for economic growth like it once did.
Well, I mean, I guess that makes sense because, there's just, the science is not creating new ways to convert resources into wealth.
Yeah.
For now. Well, I mean, I think AI is going to probably change that at some point. Although, I mean, like ChatGPT seems like a glorified Google search.
Yeah.
And maybe it combines some other features like spell check and whatnot, and it's kind of improves your regular human functions behind a computer, but it seems like absolutely no substitute at all for like an actual human being.
Yeah, agreed. It doesn't seem like it's there. It seems like it's much more likely to take so many to save employers the trouble of having to hire employees and thus diminishing employees' relevance to the production process below where they can negotiate a wage that's going to allow them to buy the products that are the result of that production process. The great Marxian prophecy of doom from like the 1870s looks like it's starting to come around. But I do agree that ChatGPT does not seem like it's in a position to revolutionize space travel, but it is going to replace coders in short order here.
Well, I think that like just homeostasis is not like a very likely outcome, or not like a great. I guess I wouldn't predict things just to like stay the same.
Certainly not. Yeah, if there's one thing we can be sure of, it's great change is always around the corner, huh?
Yeah.
Well, does that put a little bow on our recap of Dr. Hudson's illustrious visit to the System Failure Pod?
Sure.
Well, so it's been about, I can't remember when we recorded episode number 49, but it was sometime last week, or was it the week before? I think it was last week.
49 and whatever.
Whenever it was something like a week or a week and a half ago. You were all excited. You had this distinction between an opportunistic mindset versus a defensive mindset. Have I got the terms right? I think that's right.
Yeah.
Are you still thinking that way, or have you just moved on to new territory of intellectual thought?
No, I definitely still think that way. And, I still do the hot yoga, and it definitely makes me feel better when I do it. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know, I did like the open mic night at the Empire Comedy Club. Well, that was like the Thursday before last now.
Was it a Holocaust of shame?
It was not a Holocaust of shame.
No,
I might be putting it a little strongly.
That's what I would expect for anyone doing an open mic for the first time, so I would pencil that in as a victory, Brian?
Yeah. I mean, well, the best part of doing the open mic night, I talked about going to this Primus concert in the mosh pit and whatnot, and there was a lot of people vaping there, and I was doing this bit about, vaping and saying how, at least, like, cigarettes cover up the smell of BO, but, like, vaping just serves to accentuate it. And then that, the worse someone smells, the more likely they are to vape. And then there was like this buzzing, like hissing sound in the crowd. And I was like, well, if you vape, I'm sorry. And the release of tension, that was the best moment of my 4-minute set there.
Well, will you be going back to open mic night anytime soon?
Yes, that is the plan.
Like every week?
Yes.
You get out there and hammer it. All right, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess I've been listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson. I guess I don't know. I guess I feel like I'm like a shy person or something, and so I'm trying to like.
The way you said that was like sound like a shy person.
I suppose.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure out how to like attack this problem, and I guess going to open mic nights is definitely a part of the plan.
Yeah, man, there's no solution other than exposure therapy, is there? You just have to like, whatever it is, you're just like, if you're shy, you're not focusing on the interaction, like with, Dr. Hudson on last week. Like, if you're shy, you're not focusing on the interaction. You're focusing on being shy instead. And so the only way to do that is to just get out there to where that's just not even something that comes in your mind. You can instead focus on what you're next going to say. Does that sound close to the mark?
Well, it's certainly like not being in the present. And I guess you could say, I'm not really sure what the shyness is. It's like hard for me to think about. Okay, but here's one thing. If I like, I don't know. See, do you ever like say something in front of a bunch of people and then there's like you want to like whisper it to yourself afterwards.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Who hasn't done that? Well, you don't want, you hopefully don't do it out loud.
I'm trying to think of like a good example. Yeah, I don't know. Like you just say something in front of a group of people, and then you're like saying it to yourself afterwards, like in your head, and like thinking about like how it went over.
Sure.
That's like that's like a weird thing to do. But
doesn't everyone do that?
Although I mean, it's pretty human, I suppose.
Yeah. Like who hasn't been in the shower and relived old debates and thought of just the perfect thing they should have said when they were in a moment of confrontation? I mean, that's pretty much how all my showers go. Thinking up something that happened in 8th grade or something, or sometime I got pulled over by the cops when we were on the way to the Patriots game. What I could have just said to get that cop's goat, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, but I guess I think it's hard to connect with people or something. Like I guess I was having like lunch with my coworkers from my old job. I guess at my nameless company. And I guess I've like switched teams, so I don't know. Like I used to be in the trenches with those people, but now I'm not because I've got some other job that's better and doesn't involve phone calls at nights and on the weekends. And I don't know, like the vibe is like different, and I don't know. I'm not there to like commiserate over the communal misery that we used to be suffering. And I guess I was like trying to like think about things to talk about. And I don't know, like they're just like these random people who I guess used to be like my brethren, I suppose, are now just like random people. And it's like, I don't know, it's hard to bond with people. I mean, I guess in my job I used to go out and I'd talk to like random I guess tow truck drivers. You can probably guess where I work, but I'm not saying it. Man, that was like you'd roll up on a tow truck, place, and I mean, well, these people like smoke tons of cigarettes and are missing like tons of teeth. I'd go to like this one place, and like just the number of kids that just kept on coming out of the woodwork like covered in dust and like grease and whatnot because they're like working on cars like out back and stuff. You just couldn't believe like another child would show up.
Child like how old are we talking about?
I don't know, like between the ages of like 5 and 13.
So real urchins, huh? All right.
Yeah, and I don't know, like connecting with these people was just like crazily hard, I guess. Or it would have helped to like have like some face tats or something, or smoke cigarettes for sure.
Yeah, well, it's good to have things in common with the folks if you're trying to talk to people you don't know. The next best thing is to have something in common with them. And so it sounds like with your coworkers, whereas you once had something in common with them, now you no longer do. And so now you're like, well, what do we talk about?
Yeah, but why? So why is like talking to people like you don't know such a daunting challenge? Or at least I don't know, it's such a daunting challenge. And I don't know, it's just like hard to think of things to say. Although,
right, then you're thinking about how you're not thinking of something to say, and then you're really not thinking of things to say at that point.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I guess like obviously if you're thinking about trying to think of something to say, you could say that. I mean, that's like a defensive mindset, or it's not in the present, or it's not an opportunistic mindset.
It's a little people pleasy, right? What you want to do is let that person think of something to please you versus you feeling like it's on you to please them, eh?
Yeah, but then I don't know, like no one says anything, and I mean, leadership, is at some level being a good leadership. I mean, there are people at where I work who are good leaders and do, are able to move the conversation along in a good way. And like, I don't know, like how does one do that? I don't know.
I think maybe there is some overlap between leadership and, making sure the conversation goes smoothly. I think that they're separate skills, really. But it's a skill. I'm just going to learn to get the hang of it.
What's the difference between making the people around you feel comfortable and making them feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, that's a key difference. You're right.
It's a super intangible thing. It's kind of weird. But on the other hand, like I can assure you, I'm 100% sure that like I don't know, sitting around and like going on Reddit does not improve one's conversational ability, sadly, and going on the P Hub, and I would say getting ratchet also like clogs the brain, or it doesn't help.
These are all things that blow out the old limbic system and destroy your reward structures in your brain and whatnot, and just put you into a crazy place. We just didn't evolve in the context of any of the things you just mentioned, so they have profound and poorly understood impacts on our psyche and consciousness. To your point, eh?
Well, the anxiety is like a crazy phenomenon because obviously like young people are rife with it, and it's like it's this thing that we do to ourselves. We have got all this surplus of food and relative resources and whatnot, and so we're just gonna chain ourselves down with the anxiety. It's a really crazy phenomenon.
Well, to me, we definitely are flush with resources. It's a historical peculiarity. But it feels like the people who create and program these websites and apps, Reddit, the P-Hub, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of these, the people who program these, it feels like they're trying to hoard all of society's resources for themselves by tricking us or by doing an end around our logical faculties. Right? If you want to sell things to kids, if you want to get parents money, what you can do is sell things to kids who have no defense mechanisms to advertising, and then the kids will badger the parents until the parents finally relent and buy the thing. Right? So it's a analogous way of doing an end around people's logical faculties and stimulating buying behavior stimulating buying behavior without ever appealing to anyone's rationality. And so it feels to me like Meta, who owns Facebook and Instagram, is just trying to hoover up as much of our attention and sell it to the highest bidder, as mentioned before, for a profit. So, in other words, this is all being done to us at our expense, in the aforementioned context of resource plentitude that you just mentioned. I feel like they're. I feel like it's something that's being done to us. It's not something we're doing to ourselves, which is the way you put it was, why do we do this to ourselves? And I'm like, I think it's being done to us. And that's why I think that there's always capitalism once was a perfect system for the circumstances, and now circumstances have changed, and we just need a different way of organizing production than having the businesses bought and sold in a market and being run by private individuals for profit.
Yeah, well, I guess it's what Jonathan Haidt says in that you got to do things to balance it out, and that's why I was going on about the hot yoga, the podcast before last. And I guess I gotta stay off the Reddits, man. It's hard. I don't know, like you work a desk job, but you don't go on the Reddits, right? Is that what you do?
Well, it's a tough one. Reddit. So Reddit is one of the ways that I promote this. Not so much the podcast, but definitely the essays, right? Because it's written word. So I find like I have to go on r/collapse. It's also a great way to follow your sports, with the caveat that it's got the infinite scroll on it. So you got to be careful. But all that is a way of saying I've definitely drastically cut down on my Reddit time. So I wouldn't say I'm at 0, but I do go on there from time to time. I usually try to look at it once a day. And the same with Twitter. I also feel like I got to be on Twitter. I'm getting my hundreds of followers on Twitter. Hopefully I can get up over 1,000 here. In order to make headway on those apps, it really wants engagement. But what I have done is removed all of it from my phone. So nothing on my phone is visually interesting. There's no visual apps on my phone. There is Spotify, but not something that not the infinite scroll thing.
Well, I like the R, like millennial and R Gen Z. You can see how our fellow cohorts are doing out there. If they're losing their mind, which most of them are. Yeah. But you can kind of see how they're doing. And
what is the Zoomer? I know about r/millennial, but what's the Zoomer subreddit like?
Well, the Gen Z one.
Yeah.
It's just like the millennial one, but kids are a little bit younger, and I can kind of. I think maybe talk about SpongeBob more than they are millennial one.
Yeah, see, I'm just an older millennial, so I never watched SpongeBob. I saw my first episode in 2024 on Twitter. Someone had posted a full episode of SpongeBob. I watched it. It was terrible, but I think that if I was 6 or 7, I would have loved it. But
see, SpongeBob is an amazing phenomenon because it came out like the exact same time that they really stopped kids like letting roam free. Like this thing came over a dark cloud. Like, well, just at Hebron Academy back in the day,
or venerable middle and high school.
Yeah, well, they used to have like a free period for the on Wednesday afternoon for like the middle schoolers. And well, I think this is in place because in the high schoolers, they would have to travel like all over the state for sports, like hours away. And so like there was a half day like every Wednesday, and in the winter it was like a half day every Wednesday and Friday. And in any case, after 12:15, right, they would let the middle schoolers just roam free. and get up to all kinds of destruction. And you'd go and get hyped up on sugar, and there would be problems, right?
So this is specifically myself and some of the other former hosts on this podcast were the ones that unfortunately destroyed your free period because we just went through walls and windows and furniture, and it was just it was a lot. Yeah, there was a lot of damage and fighting and
Once your wake of destruction had ended, there were like 3 more years of it, to be fair, because there was 7th and 8th grade after you, and then one more my 7th grade, and there was 3 more years, and then it went away. But yes, you did untold destruction on Hebron Academy, and I guess. Well, I guess I can see why that's a problem. But so 7th grade, they take this away, and now it's like a study hall, so you have to just go and read books in the reading room, and then SpongeBob comes out, and if you look at the difference between SpongeBob and the show Doug on Nickelodeon.
Yeah, see, Doug and Rugrats are in my wheelhouse. That's when I was a kid.
Well, SpongeBob really has no redeeming value, whereas Doug is about a 6th grader, I think. We're trying to deal with the challenges of becoming a young adolescent or whatever, right? And it's just crazy how SpongeBob reflect. I mean, as kids lost responsibility, and this show is a manifestation of that, where it's just the humor is stupid and it's absolutely pointless. So I mean, there's some SpongeBob moments that I think are funny for sure. But anyway, just see, there's just the clear difference between Doug and SpongeBob. We absolved our children of responsibility or something, or something changed in this dark tide, or something happened there that I just watched it happen. Also at the same time Walmart moved into our, the town we grew up, Norway, Maine, there, and destroyed all the local economy, and it was all part of this crazy shift that happened going into the end of the 90s. Or maybe it happened in different times, but that shift happened. The kids were no longer free, and then Walmart came and wiped everything out, and we got SpongeBob instead of Doug.
I remember when the headmaster of Hebron Academy was fired by the who fired him? The board, I guess. Whatever happened, the place was bought out by private equity. Right? They brought in this man who had a flashy bow tie, and I probably told this story before, but he reminded me of the monorail salesman from The Simpsons. He was all slick, and they fired the venerable head of the school who was committed to the transcendental model of education, and instead brought in a bunch of people whose goal was to treat Hebron like an investment and maximize their return. So they started jacking up tuition rates and firing all of the old tenured professors. In college, if you're tenured, you can't be fired, but they don't have that at this high school level. So they just, my calculus teacher, and your calculus teacher, they just fired this guy the year before his pension would have kicked in, and replaced him with a fresh-faced 22-year-old Hebron alum, fresh out of college. And of course, that school has now had troubles with, the teachers who are barely older than the students sleeping with them. And that was a big thing in the news this past year. So it's been quite the disaster over at Hebron. I'm just saying that the replacement of the headmaster with private equity was another sign of the times, just like Walmart moving into town. Now, also with our private school education, I felt like I was chronically overscheduled. I mean, it was we'd have Saturday classes, and you got to drive out to New Hampshire and go to the hockey game, and then it would just be, and then we also had religious things, growing up as Baha'is on top of that, and it just got to be crazy. I mean, even without anything but school, I would get home at 6:30. We would have dinner, and then I would have hours of homework. But by then, even if you had dinner as fast as you possibly could and did the dishes as fast as you possibly could, you're looking at, by the time you shower from sports, you're looking at 7:30. By the time you can possibly turn your attention to your books, 7:45. And there wasn't enough time. Each of the professors didn't really, most of our chums, most of our other students were boarding students, so they didn't have the commute on top of their day. But the professors assigned homework with no regard to how much homework they didn't coordinate with each other, so you would just have more hours of homework to do in the night than there were hours in the evening. And I just learned to be a terrible procrastinator. You were just in survival mode the whole time. I just got to do the bare minimum to get through today so that I can do the bare minimum again to get to so in other words, being overscheduled really destroyed the same the structure reward system in my brain that we just mentioned that going on Reddit and the P-Hub destroys. So my question for you here, Brian, is do you think that there is connection between overscheduled and not letting kids go outside anymore turn them to, like the thing you talked about, you made this distinction by pointing to Doug and SpongeBob. Is being overscheduled part of that, or is that just unique, you reckon, to the private school experience? Do you think other kids are overscheduled?
Well, I think the schedule is obviously, it is built for like dorm students, and they got to keep them busy so they don't cause problems.
Yes,
And,
that definitely was what happened to us. But I definitely hear about other kids being signed up for all these things, and parents thinking the more they sign their kids up for, the better. You know, like
I find it hard to imagine that the status quo there has changed too much. I guess. I mean, I think if you've got like an involved parent, they probably book you up for stuff more than ever, and you got to be on the tennis team and the yearbook committee, and I don't know, whatever else.
No, you got to let people make their own schedules. That is, I mean, 6 and 7 years old, probably not making your own schedule, but around that time, you got to start letting kids. If I was ever lucky enough to have a kid in this world, that would be one of the big revisions to the suite of parenting techniques that we inherited. I would definitely modify that. No, do not schedule so that kids have no free time at all. Oh, yeah, that's just insane. But
I guess I think maybe other people were maybe we just weren't very good at it.
That's possible too. Well, I think if we should bring in our venerable fellow Hebron alums, some of them have been on this pod before, and put the same question to them. I suspect they might agree, but I would be interested to get their perspective for sure.
Well, anyway, just speaking of Hebron alums and like the anxiety and whatnot, I don't know, like I didn't know any of the people in my year. I didn't talk to them for like years, like probably like 10 years after going to Hebron, and I have like met up with I guess like 3 or 4 of them like recently.
So I know you've been hanging out with some of these folks for a while. So recently, you've increased your contact with former Hebronites.
Yeah, I guess there's probably like 3 of them I see sometimes, and I don't know, like it's not like I'm like. I guess I used to think all these people were like better than me, and I don't know. I'm not like in a worse off position than any of them. I don't know. I'm like as good or better, maybe, or I don't know. It depends on what metrics you're doing.
Yeah, maybe a lot of this anxiety is due to assumptions you're making about yourself that just aren't warranted. But you can't see that because you'd have to be objective to see that. You wouldn't know until you actually hang out with these people or act. It's a tough thing when you've made assumptions and now they're made, and that colors how you see the world. It's a tough thing to go back and undo those assumptions and change your perception of the world from there. Eh?
Yeah. Well, it's a bit of a knot, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Be untied.
Yeah. Just like insane scams from the oligarchy that conceal the dangers of debt. Huh? It's a knot that has to be untied.
It sure is. Yeah. So I guess I would, maybe look at, I guess the anxiety and our financial system, they seem like enigmas, but you start like tugging on the threads and, I guess you can get somewhere. You just have
Definitely. Yeah.
I guess you have to, I don't know, you have to like confront the issues. Like Jordan Peterson was talking about like what makes a meaningful life. You have to like confront the chaos in your life, like honestly. And so I guess that's the name of the game. Yeah. Honestly,
and you're gonna have to probably undo some assumptions you had already made to get the right. I mean, the part of being, I guess that's part of being honest. But what JBP content have you been consuming? You listening to his audiobooks or just running through his recent pods, or what's going on?
Like his lectures on YouTube.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, so like maps of meaning and all that?
I guess mostly just interviews he's been doing with some people. I was listening to some of his, Sam Harris talks from like the O2 in London from years ago. And, other authors that I can't remember the name of, but, saying to like aim up and confront chaos. It's a good idea. Yeah.
So in episode number 49, prior to Dr. Hudson, you seemed like you were flying high. Would you say that trajectory has continued in the 2 weeks intervening?
I guess I did not do the open mic night last Thursday, which I felt silly about. I think you just have to go up there, and it really is about like writing the jokes only like gets you can only like workshop the jokes so much. You got to get out there and interact with the crowd.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like well, I've managed to make it a week not on the P Hub.
it's a sizable achievement.
It's always a good streak to get going. Yeah. And I think there's just I mean, there's like a lot of work to be done. But man, I would
a lot of work to be done. Meaning what?
I don't know. I gotta like not go on the Reddit for sure. If I could like not go on the Reddit, I think that would help a lot. But I'm doing the Kung Fu. I can't remember if I said that already. Yeah, you're doing some karate poses there. That's good.
I had to act out my best Kung Fu.
Yeah. And all that stuff is definitely good. And yeah, I think I've got like I guess my goal is for like 2 years is to hit the Empire like every Thursday, or at least, every conceivable Thursday, and do like the Kung Fu for 2 years and do the hot yoga for 2 years. And maybe some other things, like, I don't know, like workout maybe, but man, it's what I really need is like a physical therapist or someone to really show me how to fix my hip flexors or figure out what's going on exactly.
I fantasize about flying down to Houston and getting a ring dinger. For those who don't know what a ring dinger is, there's this chiropractor down in Houston who puts up YouTube videos. Just search for ring dinger on YouTube. Recently, Jack Harlow, the rapper, was down there getting himself a ring dinger. And essentially what happens is the man sets you on a table with raised foam pads underneath your knees such that your legs are up at 90-degree angles to your hips, and then your shins and feet point straight out again. And then he just wraps a towel around your neck and just pulls straight up. And the cracks and crunches that people get from just having their spine decompressed for a moment like that, is wild. I watch these videos with jealousy. I'd love to have it happen sometime.
Well, I fantasize about going to England or Wales or wherever that Mr. Thumbs guy who's got like these mutated thumbs, and he just like works people over and they like scream and writhe and stuff, and that sounds absolutely awesome. But speaking of ring dingers, it's just that Shane Gillis has this show on Netflix, and just at the start of one of the episodes, he's like watching chiropractic videos on YouTube, and like never had I felt so understood as when he was during that scene on that tire show on Netflix. That was awesome. The show itself was a little okay, but I don't know. Shane Gillis is a funny guy. We've talked about him before in the pod.
Yeah, he's one of the better ones, I reckon, out there. Yeah, he's pretty good.
He keeps it pretty real.
Yeah. So one final comment. You mentioned we were just talking about the connection between the economic dimensions of our lives and the anxiety and shame and whatever that we're also experiencing. And I just wanted to comment. Hilarious. It's not immediately obvious that all of our problems are financial. It was an easy intuition for me because my shame and regret came every month in the form of a statement with numbers on it. It was really clearly a financial issue for me and my student loans. For most people, it's not quite as obvious. So one of the important missions of system failure is to enlighten everyone as to why it is that capitalism is responsible for all the problems in their life.
Yeah. I mean, I guess even if you don't have a hefty student loan bill to pay, it's getting you in other ways.
Sure. Yeah. Like just the attention economy with these electronic devices. Look no further. We've mentioned 1,000 times. And with that, Brian, have you got any other status updates? Should we move on to the political sphere and discuss the abandonment of RFK of his presidential campaign?
Sure.
Well, did you have a chance to watch RFK's speech? I guess it was Friday. He came out and said, "All right, I'm going to drop out and endorse the Donald."
Let's see. I was watching Crystal and Sagar talk about it. Did you see them?
I didn't. What did those two have to say?
Man, their opinions really made me cringe because like Crystal hates RFK, and she let it show. Like they were saying that RFK was like trying to like play the system, and I don't know that he like wasn't. They accused him of like malfeasance, and I don't know. They're just trying to like grow his own brand, which you should do as a politician.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, RFK dropping out and endorsing the Donald. Well, I guess I'm not surprised. I don't think the Donald really I listened to Dave Smith's podcast about the assassination attempt on the Donald, which was like a subscriber only thing, but just got released on his regular feed, and he was just talking about how like the Donald like doesn't pack any heat anymore because he knows he's gonna get shot, and. Yeah, I mean, we wondered whether like this was like a lone actor before. I think that Donald Trump knows that he can't He can't go out there. This like Donald Trump doesn't hit like he used to. Like what was awesome was when QAnon was a thing.
Yeah.
Like, now Hillary Clinton drinks the blood of children. That's a titillating conspiracy theory that'll get me involved in the political process. But not like Donald Trump just doesn't hit like he used to. And so I don't know. I was talking to my coworkers at lunch about Donald Trump, and they all they don't like Kamala and they want the Donald, and they weren't trying to hear that he doesn't hit like he used to. But I mean, I don't know how much of it is kayfabe, but I mean, if you're the DNC, obviously the plan is to just not have Kamala talk very much, and it seems like you can just kind of smash her through, or cram her down our throats or whatever. I'd have to imagine that that's going to work. Like I am not excited about the Donald's chances. But also, if the Donald runs and loses, I guess we get to look forward to 4 more years of Donald Trump running in the same exact static, political where we're at with politics is just Donald Trump saying stuff against and the main CNN giving favorable coverage to whoever the latest Democratic shill is, right?
Yeah. I agree with all of that. I do think Kamala is far worse than the Donald in terms of her politicking ability, but he doesn't have the mojo he used to have. Like, what's up? He used to, he would be the best. He would go and say, just shout conspiracies. It was the best. And I just don't hear any. I think the Donald is fully co-opted. He's got Wall Street backing. I think we're just in the classic situation once again where we've got corporate money backing both ponies. They don't care which one wins. They know they're getting their policies through. They're going to get their wars and their censorship and their tax cuts and whatever else. And the policy differences domestically are trifling between Kamala and the Donald, and the foreign policy differences are non-existent between Kamala and the Donald. And so I think I'm going to have to. Well, are you aware that obviously in 2016 I voted for the crazy cat lady Jill Stein, and I am not sure if you're aware. Maybe you are, Brian. But we have had the economic advisor to the Jill Stein campaign on this podcast. That'd be the aforementioned Dr. Hudson. And so I don't know. I think for me, if I had to pull the lever today, I'm just going to cast another vote for Jill Stein. Her policies are the closest that align with. I could see voting for the Donald in some strategic sense.
Well, we do have ranked choice here in Maine.
Yeah, we do. I could see voting for the Donald in a first, maybe because we'll get Bobby Kennedy to be the Department of Health and Human Services head or something like that. There could be a strategic angle. I'm not seeing it. I agree with zero of the Donald's policies. I think his tweets are funny, but he doesn't have a single policy I'd agree with. And the crazy cat lady, Jill Stein, I shouldn't call her that. I mean that as a joke, but she has the best and most sober policy proposals among all of them, and most notably as opposed to the ongoing genocide in Gaza. So I think I'm going to have to throw my vote third party once again. So unsatisfying, but it's the right thing to do, I think.
Well, I'm just sure it doesn't matter. But I don't know. Dave Smith is a convincing guy. And I'm sure that corporate money is on both sides. But the bit where the Donald's I think he's been reined in by this assassination attempt. It just seems evident or I don't know, we're in this post-Biden world where they're not cramming the person who's obviously dying and incapable down our throats. That was a wild a couple months there. Or the bit where they didn't have a primary. Well, we've talked about it before, but the Democratic Party just hasn't had a real primary since Obama and Hillary, whenever that was, 2008, right?
Yeah. 12, right? Yeah.
12?
No, there was no primary because Obama would be the incumbent, so you're right, 2008, yeah.
So, the Democratic Party, man, it's a huge mockery.
Yeah, we need some actual policies to benefit the working class. They're not going to be able to just use the media to try to cram Kamala down our throats. I think it will ultimately be unsuccessful. I wonder if she'll even if she's terrible, right? She was horrible in 20. She had all this corporate money. She couldn't get a single delegate. She dropped out before Iowa. In the intervening years, there's reports that all of her staffers hate her and are constantly quitting on her. She's not old as hell like the Donald, like Biden. Yeah. She can read on a teleprompter, but she's awful in interview scenarios. I think it's going to be tough for them to just do a redux of 2020, hide Kamala, and be like, well, you just have to vote for her because she's not the Donald. I don't think it's going to work.
Well, I guess I used to think it would be important to get the Donald elected to end the war in Ukraine and lower the chances of nuclear annihilation. And I just don't have any confidence in the Donald. Like, if he does get elected and do that, then something else terrible will happen, like the COVID or I don't know, like the military-industrial complex or whatever is going to get there somehow.
I think the military-industrial complex is just as likely to support the Donald as Kamala. He gave the Pentagon more money than they even asked for when he was president. He's for all the wars, right? It's like, or maybe not Ukraine. You know, Bobby Kennedy's against Ukraine also. I guess we can be happy about that, but.
Well, it's just hard. I just don't feel like politically enfranchised at all.
Agreed.
And it's just, I can't imagine anyone like really caring anymore. It's over, and I don't know. Hopefully, the Donald like goes away after this friggin' election. Either he wins and he can't run again, or he loses and he finally goes away. All right, yeah. Just the political process is just so. Andrew Cuomo, you know, who got shamed debating Dave Smith. Speaking of Chris Cuomo, like he was just reporting. He was at the DNC. Maybe it was Andrew Cuomo who was there. Anyway, it was one of the Cuomo brothers. They were also talking about this on Breaking Points with Crystal and Saga there. But he was at the DNC talking about, well, like the Democratic Party is saying some stuff about how they're gonna, I don't know, like reform taxes and tax corporations or something. But he's in whatever, I'm not sure what building it is in Chicago, but it's a big arena, and he's pointing up at the luxury seats and saying, they cost $500,000. Yeah. And obviously the Democratic Party is they're gonna shill for the elites, and anyway. The status quo is going to continue. Yeah.
It used to be the Dems got all of their campaign financing from the labor unions, but then the labor unions were destroyed in the 70s and 80s as our capitalist overlords moved all that production capacity to China, our biggest economic rival. And so the Clintons pioneered, after the Reagan years, having corporate donors also. So the Democratic Party really seems like it's an influence peddling. They're just going to sell their power to the highest bidder, and the highest bidder is never going to be working and middle class folks. And more to the point, they don't know what they know that they're for sale. They don't know who's going to buy them and necessarily what they have to do. So there's like they have to get all of us to vote for them without telling us why they're doing what they're doing. And it really just makes for a bizarre political spectacle where there's no primaries and no interviews and no anything, and it's just really eerie and weird.
Yeah, I think what we got to do is figure out like how we're gonna like politically regroup here, because people who wanted like positive changes in politics, we voted for Obama back in 2008, and then when the Democratic Party stuffed Bernie. I would say that's how the Donald got elected in 2016. And then, I guess they managed to cram Biden down our throats amid the COVID in 2020. And they managed to keep RFK out. And so, I don't know, back in 2016, like Reddit and all, like the media, that was like all these things, like the social media outlets all fell in line like after the Donald got elected to say that to be against the Donald or whatever. Social media changed and like the news changed then, right? And like NPR changed at that time. And so I don't know how we're gonna do it, but we gotta figure out like a way to like regroup politically. Like the sane people are the people at the bar, as Roger Waters would say. Or that was the theme of his last concert tour. Anyway, there's your obligatory Pink Floyd reference. But yeah, like sane people need to figure out a way to like regroup politically here. I don't know what we're gonna do, but this Kamala versus the Donald business is not doing it.
Yeah. I'll never forget. Obviously, in 2016, the Bruins beat the Canadiens 5-1, and we flipped over to the game from the game to the political coverage, and that was the year that obviously the DNC, as you mentioned, denied Bernie and installed the ever putrid Hillary Clinton in his stead. And I was so angry about that because Bernie's thing was we're going to wipe out student loan debt, and that was exactly my problem. And to have the corrupt DNC install the gargoyle of Hillary Clinton instead of Bernie is I've never voted Democrat again and probably never will. And then the next day I was driving to work and I remember NPR was talking about how the Donald is a terrifying agent of Moscow. And I felt bad about my jubilation. I was like, well, the NPR reports this. It must be true. And I felt bad that I had... now, I voted for Jill Stein then, too. Couldn't vote for the Donald. But I felt bad being excited that the Donald had won. And then weeks turned into months. The Mueller investigation turned out to be a zero. And it turned out that the whole Russian thing was from Fusion GPS, this opposition research firm, and that they had been paid by the Hillary Clinton campaign. And then NPR was just uncritically reporting this without doing any sort of looking under the hood at their sources. And I think that they're still, because they're corporate, because they've taken corporate money, they're just totally willing to mislead their listeners. And now we've got our local NPR affiliate moving from their tiny little strip mall into the huge public market building that's in the center of downtown Portland. I mean, they seem strangely flush with cash, even the local Portland, Maine NPR affiliate. So I don't know. They're certainly not to be trusted, and I'll never listen to them again either. So where does that leave us politically, Brian? Right where you said totally homeless.
Yeah, I mean, the only places that keep it real, I guess, are maybe podcasts like ours.
Yeah, well, we haven't taken any corporate money. We'll probably sound a lot differently if we ever do, and it'll be pretty obvious. But
I think we really should vote for Kamala Harris. Who,
I'm Cocoa for Kamala. What is the thing? Coconuts for Kamala? I don't know, whatever that thing is. Yeah. Yeah. Well. I was hoping for a lot more excitement during this presidential election, but I don't know. Do you think this is just gonna be it until November? What do you think? There's gonna be any fireworks, any October surprises to light and titillate us?
No.
Yeah. That's how I felt too. I thought the Donald would be more vigorous. He was like holding up his fist and shouting "fight" in the moments after his shooting. Yeah, but he has really, ever since that, he hasn't shown a hint of that since then. He must have had time to sit and really think about his brush with death and how worth it is for the Donald to go around bandying conspiracy theories, risking getting shot.
Dave Smith was saying that he's not even willing to die for his ideas. He's got two kids he's got to take, raise and whatnot. And then, I mean, the Donald's not willing to die for his ideas, right? I mean, come on, man. And the Donald is not the hero we need.
What do you know? Yeah, another lackluster election season with two milquetoast candidates with barely any discernible policy differences.
I mean, the good news is that if the Donald gets elected, I don't know how the Democrats can avoid to run an actual primary in 2028, right? And then maybe RFK has a chance, or someone who's not a shill, right?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. They've been able to get away with a lot more than I would have thought that they would be able to. But I guess having power over the media, over people's fact-finding apparatus, really allows you to shape people's realities, and you can get them to run like rats in a maze in the direction you want them to.
Well, if Kamala wins, we can look forward to 8 more years without a real Democratic primary, and that is a heck of a kicking the can down the road there for the powers that be.
Well. She is a truly wretched politician and is deeply unlikable. So maybe if they can hide Kamala, maybe they can sneak her in there. But if they have to parade her around, then I still think that Donald will be able to beat her. But what do I know?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a bummer because we had so much action, and now I'm just politically unexcited, disenfranchised, as I was saying.
Yeah. I mean, do I even bother to vote anymore? It feels so silly. It's so dumb. Ugh. But I don't know. We'll have to meditate on that between now and November, eh, Brian?
All right.
Yeah. Well, I guess that should just about wrap up this exciting episode of System Failure. What do you reckon, Brian?
Yeah.
For those of you who would like to send us an email and let us know why we should vote for Kamala, do so at not@substack.com. And if you want to go online and subscribe to your weekly System Failure newsletter, you can do that at not.substack.com. And I suppose that's about it, Brian? We'll see all of our valued listeners next week.
All right. Yeah, we'll see you.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.